cheap. I only got one life to live, I'm not no other. My mama taught me how to land on my feet. I have this way of finding trouble, it's never far. Wherever I go, take one step after another. You gotta move like a rolling stone. Hey, you gotta move like a rolling stone. Oh yeah. Hey, you gotta move like a rolling stone. Oh yeah. Well, I woke up this morning with the devil knocking on my door. Well, he came without warning with the deal, you know, I just couldn't ignore. I do believe, my pretty lady, that it's time for me to move along. Take one step after another. You gotta move like a rolling stone. Hey! You gotta move like a rolling stone. Oh yeah! Hey! You gotta move like a rolling stone. Oh yeah! You gotta move like a rolling stone. Oh yeah. Hey. You gotta move like a rolling stone. Oh yeah. Hey. You gotta move like a rolling stone. Oh yeah. Hey, you gotta move like a rolling stone. Oh yeah. I feel naked in a cell. It's cold and dark as hell. So vulnerable, got nothing else to say to you. I feel wasted all the same. You go back, come again, making nice with the other guys after what I said to you. It's not I'm against you. I just wish I was against you. With us lying down upon each other's side. Funny how it feels when the water's on the other side. Funny how it feels when the water's
because this craziness, this sickness in this country now is shot through the whole society. You know, people in law enforcement have also succumbed to right-wing extremism and white nationalism. Again, what this points up is how pervasive and vast a problem this is, and we will be dealing with it for a long time.
I said, something's wrong here, something's really wrong, can't have happened, and we fight. We fight like hell, and if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. As this enormous crowd shows, we have truth and justice on our side. So we're going to walk down Pennsylvania Avenue. I love Pennsylvania. And we're going to the Capitol. But we're going to try and give our Republicans, we're going to try and give them the kind of pride and boldness that they need to take back our country. So let's walk down Pennsylvania Avenue. I want to thank you all. God bless you, and God bless America.
that video. What can I say? Alright, let me get that dealt with and then switch over here so that you can see my lovely, lovely face. Hi, everybody. Welcome. It's the 36th Yammering with the Masses, because I couldn't come up with a better thing than just numbers. Yeah. Turns out today is my 1 year anniversary, or recently, I guess. I don't know if it was today or not, but is my 1 year anniversary on YouTube. And I was streaming for a couple months before. I think I started late November of 2019, right around where COVID was starting to drive us all a little bit squirrely. And now we're here. And it makes me a little nostalgic. So I originally started this channel. I was doing just conversations. What had happened was, in the middle of all the lockdown, boredom, drudgery stuff that was going on, my buddy Che reached out to me, and just for a like, hey, how you doing, kind of a conversation. And it was really, really awesome just to have a conversation with a human. It was super good. And so I decided at the time, I was like, you know what, I should stream these. I should make like a regular thing of where I'm just going to call a friend of mine with their knowledge ahead of time, and we'll talk about stuff and just catch up, and maybe people will like that. That was the original sort of impetus behind all of this. And then that was also when I started to pay a little bit more attention to YouTube content. For me, I'm Generation X. YouTube was always the thing that my kids did. I liked YouTube. I like videos, but it was me going, oh, what else is out there? What are people doing? And I found my way into the realm of the Breadtube videos, and I was like, oh, there's some cool shit out here. I like some of this. So that has been a cool process of evolution for me. So that's been cool. But yeah, that was the where did I come from? Where do I go? That's the interesting question. So, cool people who stream on their 1 year anniversary, they're getting their like 100,000 subscriber placards and stuff. I am at 76 subscribers. That's huge. But I also do nothing to try and garner more views and stuff. But I think there's, part of what I'm going to talk about today will be a little bit about what I kind of see for the future for this stream, and things that I want to sort of take on in the next little while. Because this is very much a hobby for me, but it's also a hobby that I quite enjoy. So, might as well put some effort in. Not like I'm going looking for subscribers, or I'm going looking for Twitch monies or anything like that. Money is the least of my interests. And frankly, if it comes right down to it, I can say that things like I've struggled with the idea of like what would happen if I ever became successful on Twitch or YouTube, because every penny going to me, a fraction of that penny would go to a corporation that I do not like. And that's where the humiliations came up in my head, and the original idea was to give people an alternative for sending me money. But then I realized, like, no one wants to send me money because I'm nobody, and no one should send me money because I'm not that person. I don't need it. I don't want it. So it kind of seems silly to worry about. But yeah, so that's the whole thing. It's the 1 year. That's kind of cool. If you caught it in my intro, the video that played right before I started is a song by Sons of Sedition by Bodies of Everest, which is my band, one of my 3 bands. We released a video on January 6th, technically it was January 5th at like 11 o'clock at night, but we were too excited. And we were hoping that like maybe the 1 year anniversary fervor would drive some views our way. It's we're doing all right. It's we're approaching 700 views, which for a little time person like me and a little band that no one's ever heard of, that's pretty cool. But happy 1 year. Thank you. She Loves Puns. Thank you for being here. And it is a happy 1 year. I have a little bit of coffee. I got some beer. It's going to be a good day. And hopefully we'll have a fun stream where we learn a whole bunch of cool stuff about stuff. Plus, I am going to be singing some karaoke at the end, the weekly humiliations. I decided on Stewart by the Dead Milkmen, which I think is just a fantastic little song. And Mirror Mirror by Blind Guardian, which I'm probably going to absolutely ruin. Hopefully in a really good way, but probably not. It's probably going to be very regrettable. So we'll find out. Anyways, yeah, it's good to be here. It's Saturday. I'm dealing with a migraine right now, but that's life on the prairies. We get the beautiful break in the weather. We've literally been like minus 30 for like a month straight, Celsius, for all the millions of Americans watching. And we're now above zero. And what that means is we have a Chinook. And Chinooks are these weird pressure changes that only happen in a handful of places on Earth. My hometown being one of them, Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Go whatever sports ball team. And I'm one of the many Calgarians who, with these rapid pressure shifts, get migraines. So I've taken some sinus pills. We'll see how I hold up. But it's going to be good no matter what. Worst case scenario, my migraines are not the kind where you can't like move or you have to be in the dark. They're just like every single muscle in my neck, back, and into my like scalp all knot up, and it becomes very uncomfortable. So hopefully that doesn't happen. Hopefully the sinus pills, which are the way that I deal with it, hopefully they make it fuck right off. We'll find out. Yeah, it's been an eventful week. I did a project. I can't really talk about the project because it's for a friend of mine, and he doesn't know about it yet. But I was involved in a project, and I'm pretty excited about how that was. It was fun. And I basically just been dealing with the headaches and watched a bunch of movies on the Netflix and Disney Plus and things. So I got hopefully today will be like a whole bunch cooler, and we'll have fun and we'll learn. So what do I want to talk about today? Chat, feel free to chime in if there's anything you want me to talk about, or anything I said that you're like, well, that was dumb, because I do that. First and foremost, I want to talk a little bit about a little bit of the YouTube drama, or the left tube drama, bread tube drama, whatever you want to call it. So a creator who I had actually not heard of, I'll tell you the story how it came to my attention. I had seen FD Signifier in my suggested videos a couple of times, and for whatever reason hadn't watched any of their content. And then I was like, oh yeah, I'll give this a whirl, and I enjoyed the video, and I mentioned it to my eldest, who is quite the social justice warrior type, and he said, there's another video of his that's making the rounds right now, and it's a little bit controversial, so maybe you should watch that and tell me what you think. So FD Signifier is a black content creator, and the video is a condemnation of the fact that Breadtube, which is the very no longer apt name, I think, for leftist YouTube, that most of the Breadtubers, this sort of was, it's like an old title, and it refers to the lefties who were making video essay content. And by and large, a very, very white group of people. There are black content creators in that area, but it's fairly homogeneously white, and that's, these are facts. And FD Signifier was pointing that out and saying, like, this is something that I think is not very cool, and why aren't we signal boosting black voices, and why doesn't the algorithm signal boost people of color and things like that. Ironically, I found out about FD Signifier through the algorithm, so, not to say, haha, point one, but certainly there's a lot more white faces than non-white faces that show up in my suggested videos, and so that's, I don't disagree at all, and I guess this triggered some uproar, and it was an interesting thing. I was actually kind of not sure if I would approach this or how I would approach this, because ultimately I'm a little tiny streamer Andy, and my voice kind of doesn't matter in this, and also, one more honky voice in the honky chorus is probably not the thing that we need. And then I thought, well, maybe I'll signal boost some of the people of color that I follow. And there are some, it's not huge. I have a lot more on TikTok, and I don't go on TikTok as a general thing, just because I find it annoying, largely. I'm going to blame that on me being an old curmudgeonly man. But most of the stuff that I see on TikTok, for whatever reason, I get a huge amount of indigenous content. So people like Modern Warrior, who I love, and who a lot of white people get real frustrated about, because when they act like colonizers, he calls them when they act like colonizers, he calls them colonizers. And I've been down that road of being called a colonizer and having to sort of look at things and go, that's actually valid. It's not a fun and pleasant thing, and a lot of people are really not interested in hearing it, because it conflicts with how we view ourselves. And I think that's an important thing to do, but an uncomfortable thing to do for a lot of people. And a lot of people simply will shut down and be like, oh no, that is not me. I am not that person. I therefore can basely point out that you are wrong, sir. But I really enjoy his content. And on Twitch, I would highly recommend a guy named Ike Solace, who is fantastic. Also Shark Zero, who I really enjoy. There's others like Joe Lewis I've seen on debate panels and stuff, and I enjoy him. I hear a lot of people saying he's a black nationalist. I don't know if that's a thing or not. I don't get that vibe from Joe Lewis, but I am by no means an expert. But Shark Zero is just a fun character, and Ike Solace I thoroughly enjoy. He has a very curious mind, and so when topics come up, he likes to sort of dig in and get to the bottom of stuff. So I would highly recommend both of those content creators. And on YouTube, the reality is FD Signifier I do enjoy, although his disdain for debate bro culture is kind of a thing that recently I had sort of pop in my face, and I was like, ooh, that's valid. But I do like his content. I do like he does a lot of movie related stuff and a lot of conversations about issues from a black perspective, which I think is really good. And Cat Black would be the other one, who is a trans woman on YouTube, very, very long time streamer, like one of the early YouTubers, and nothing but quality content as far as I'm concerned, and really good, especially when issues around trans things come up. Cat Black has always really good and thoughtful takes, not reactive, not something happens and immediately jumps on the internet. Cat takes the time to understand and go through things and really come to a very, very cogent discussion. Whether I agree or not, I'm always impressed by the quality of content. So those would be examples of people. Those are probably, I don't want to make myself sound like the white superhero. That's probably the extent of the people of color that I regularly follow on social media, and I sort of get exactly what FD Signifier was implying as a result of that. There are plenty of non-white voices, and they do get drowned out in the white cacophony of whiteness. And that is, I think, something that needs to get dealt with. But it's kind of like way back when I was involved in the organized atheist movement. People would regularly ask the question, how do we encourage women to come to our events? How do we, engage women atheists? How do we help women be a part of our community? And unfortunately, the people having that comment or that conversation were almost always white men, and they were almost always like, how do we get women to come to our events? Because I like women. This was pre-Gamergate, and this was the sign of things to come for organized atheism and the skeptic community, and a large part of the reason I turned tail and ran from those communities, because they were dog shit and full of people who they were skeptics, but they were also giant fucking assholes, and often racist, often sexist. They were skeptical when it came to the religion, and that was pretty much it. It was a really uncomfortable time in my world, because I was a fairly new atheist at the time, or at least new to accepting my atheism and feeling like I could speak about it. And here are all these people who I'm like, oh wow, they're saying the same things, and then all of a sudden I was like, no, they're not. Holy shit, they're saying terrible things. Like, what was Dawkins' thing? I can't remember what it was. It was like so close to a racial slur. And I had revered Dawkins as a brilliant mind. I own several of his books, and I thought they were really well thought out and really excellent at ways of debunking. And I'm not talking about the God Delusion. The God Delusion is, it's a compilation of essays. It's fine. If you're one of those people who's sort of just questioning your faith, maybe it's a good book to convince you. I would have gone with was it The Pocket Atheist or something like that? The Hitchens book. I don't even remember if that's the name of it. But yeah, like there were plenty of other books that in that regard. But what I liked from Dawkins was things like pardon me. Things like the Ancestor's Tale. Was it and the Ancestor Tales, which is sort of done in the style of the Canterbury Tales, and each story goes back a leap in our evolution, sort of, is an imagined what would life have been like at this point in our evolutionary timeline, and that's really cool. Also, I think he had one called The Blind Watchmaker. I know all these things, I just can't think of them off the top of my head, but The Blind Watchmaker is a refutation to the Christian idea espoused by guys like Ray Comfort, that obviously if there's a thing, it had to have a creator and therefore God. And it was a really good book. So anyways, where the fuck was I going with that? Jesus. The short and skinny of it is, there's a lot of white voices, and they get a lot more attention, I think, in I guess the popular kids YouTube than they probably should. And I watched this interesting video today by Xander Hall, who I have a lot of respect for. And he was, I'm going to include, I'll just paste the link into chat, so if people want to watch it after the fact, they can, because I really thought this was a very excellent look at things. One sec, copy, and I'll paste it into the Restream chat so it goes in both. There we go. Both. And by both, I mean YouTube and Twitch. Because I'm huge. I stream on 2 platforms simultaneously, like a master ninja. So essentially what Xander Hall was doing, and he was just sort of, it started off spitballing with his chat, talking about Gamergate and talking about like what was going on at the time. And they put together all of these different things, talking about like sort of before Gamergate was happening and then when Gamergate happened and then after Gamergate and sort of the rise of Breadtube and things like that. And what he was talking about was really interesting to me. And it's basically the idea of cultural trends and the idea that this left-right social media flippy-floppy that we've done over the years is predictable, and it's based on what's going on in the world. And anti-establishment people such as myself, we tend to not follow the norm. That's sort of what the thing we do is. And in my case, very young in my life, I'd realized that I was a monster of various descriptions and that I needed to not jump too quickly into siding with the government or believing what the media wants me to believe, all these kinds of things. But also doing so from a healthy perspective where I say, okay, well, they're saying this stuff. What do I think? And what's a valid assessment of the facts? And I got into things. Again, this would be tied to my days as a skeptic and a member of organized atheism. I looked at things like Carl Sagan's baloney detection kit, and which is a really good way of testing the veracity of a claim and deciding for yourself whether or not you subscribe to it. And those kinds of things have served me extremely well because I can be anti-establishment. And then when a situation like the one we find ourselves in right now comes along and all of a sudden we have to question, are we going to, allow the government and the media to tell us to get vaccinated? And I look at the actual people who are experts in the subject, and I drive my decisions based on expertise. And I think that is an important thing. But I don't think a lot of anti-establishment people do that. I think a lot of people who are anti-establishment are not terribly engaged in being anti-establishment people. They're just, regular Joes. And I don't mean that as in any way an insult. I just mean that most people don't care so deeply about some of this stuff. And again, that's all right. But it leaves them open to a little bit of the manipulation of the times. And a good example of that is the current discourse around Joe Biden. So, for the record, Joe Biden, I think, is a terrible, terrible president. I think he's a terrible president based on the fact that I think he is too old and probably not all the way mentally well. I base that not on, hyperbolic statements of, look at him, he's so old, but more on the fact that, he's lived a long life before becoming president. And a lot of the things that he's, the behaviors that I've seen of his in press conferences and stuff don't fill me with comfort that he is firing on all cylinders. I don't think he's an incompetent, and I don't think he's, evil, unlike the last guy. But I don't think that, he is the best of choices. I hate the idea that America seems to have that your leader should be an old white man. And yeah, you can throw Barack Obama up and go, but in a lot of ways, Barack Obama was a more progressive version of an old white man, because while obviously he wasn't white, his policies and his practices were very establishment and very in line with what the old white men had always done. It's easy to look at Joe Biden and be frustrated, especially for people who maybe loved Bernie Sanders and were like, yeah, man, Bernie, he's so anti-establishment, and he's so thoughtful, and he's for the workers and all that kind of stuff. And I agree. I am, I'm not a Bernie bro, and I'm certainly not a Bernie or Buster, but I was much bigger on Bernie than I was on pretty much any of the other candidates. I was supportive of Elizabeth Warren, and then, being a Canadian, I don't know all the nuances, and when the whole, I am 1/64th Cherokee princess bullshit came up, I was like, oh, you had to have seen this coming. This was a poor choice. You've just shown me that you're making claims and things that you really shouldn't, and you should have fucking known better. I get it, but I'm not gonna stand for it. I'm not gonna like signal boost somebody who is kind of a little bit on the way to tone deaf. So yeah, Bernie was the guy that I would have picked, and Joe Biden is no Bernie Sanders. In fact, Joe Biden is no Barack Obama. For my frustrations with Obama, at least he did a lot of good stuff. I don't think Joe has done anything, and I don't think that he's the guy that should be in power. Now, of those two, Biden over Trump, hell yeah, Biden. Hell yeah. Because Trump is dangerous and equally dodgy in terms of overall mental acuity, maybe even worse. Person, man, woman, camera, TV. I was more than a little bit concerned. Age discrimination isn't pretty, old, therefore useless. I totally agree. And I hope you don't think that I'm age discriminating right now. I am talking specifically about the quality of mental acuity of the two people in question. But I also think that age discrimination the other way, Kennedy, again, I'm no American, I don't know all the details, but he was in a lot of respects a pretty decent president, and was a young buck. The rule, I think, is 35 is the minimum in the U.S. But no one even looks at you till you're 70. And I think that's unfortunate, because not only does it have the whole issue with people like Trump and Biden, who probably, shouldn't be in the positions that they're in, but I think also, I remember being very nervous about John McCain when he was potentially, going to lead the Republicans, with Sarah Palin as his number two, because I was like, oh shit. I don't want Sarah Palin as president, and he's certainly not in good health. So what age, color, gender is the correct one for president, do I think? Loaded question warning. And I would say there isn't one. I would say it is wrong to assume that a president is good based on their demographics. I would even say that if Joe Biden was doing the good stuff and making positive steps, that I would have no problem, despite concerns about his age. So quit whining about age and gender. Nope, not gonna. I don't think it's a question of what's the best or what's the worst. I think that we can look at individuals and hold them up to a test of are they the right choice for president? And we call those things elections, and unfortunately, they're usually not very based in motherfucking biatch back out now. I'm not backing out of nothing. I think that that's the whole point, is when we look at, and this is one of the problems that we have in not just in America's two-party system, but Canada also, I think, suffers really highly from the necessity for narrowing the choice down to a handful. Come on, Jim, which one? Give me one. Why don't you reverse the answer? Pick something left. Oh, do you want me to give you an exact age, gender, and color that is correct for the president? I will say 33, so that it's under the possible age. The color would be mango, and the gender would be tree spirit. That's the perfect. Any other president is not a president for anyone. So yeah, not a coward. At a Jim. So the point that I bring all this up is right now there's a lot of really effective conversation about how Biden is not a very good president, and how that kind of leads us down a slope to say, well, obviously, the Democrats were the wrong choice. We should have voted for the other guy. And a lot of people will get swayed by that, and they'll be open to conversations that are a little more right-wing. And I think it's fair to say that we're going to see a shift in YouTube content. And, Xander Hall talked about this in the video about how, the whoever's in power kind of sways a little bit. The anti-establishment people will automatically shy away from the side that currently is running the show. And it's because no matter who's running the show, it's always bad, and it's always not necessarily bad, but in need of bettering. I think that's an interesting thing. I think those cultural trends are important to understand. So how does this all tie to the FD signifier and Is Breadtube Too White and all of these kinds of things? I don't think this is a thing that I can answer, and I don't think it's a thing I should answer. But I do think that one of the concerns I have is a sort of frustrated position that I, as a honky, find myself in regularly. And I'm not looking for, oh, poor white man sympathy. But how do I balance expressing myself and expressing myself hopefully as an ally and promoting positive messages with not cluttering up and taking away as a white face from other content creators or other whatever the fuck I'm doing? How do I, in my work world, how do I make sure that I'm advancing in my career but not stifling other people? And I don't think there's an answer to that. And I don't think it's an important thing for me as a person individually to answer, or to try to resolve. I think the best thing that I can do is continue doing what I do it as well as I can, and where possible, promote other voices. But the biggest fear I have is if we're not all, if I'm just sit back and be quiet, then other people's voices get to speak for me, and that's sometimes not a good thing either. Certainly from my own narcissistic, egocentric perspective, I like what I'm doing, and I'm going to keep doing it. But what I mean by that, other voices thing is, and FD Signifier is a good example of this. He talks about how debate bros are bad. And I've talked about how I don't see much point in debates in the current way that they're done, but I don't think debate concepts and debate culture are bad. And there's a part of me that struggles with maybe I should be engaging in some of that. And it's because I can defend points and I can think on the spot about when my issues are challenged. And the reason I think that's important is I don't think there's a lot of people who aren't willing or able to do that. And right now, there's a lot of very, very prominent right-wing voices and right-wing attitudes in those spheres that need to be challenged and often aren't. And that's a concern to me. I'm not talking about right-wing as in, they actually believe in smaller government. I'm talking about right-wing as in, people who are steadily creeping towards uncomfortably right-wing fascism and things like that. And without challenging those things, they get a pass. And if you challenge them poorly, if you have a debate lords meeting and one of them, the guy on the left does a piss poor job because he's not someone who's very well versed in defending his points, then the other side looks right. People who are trained to be in the public square and have learned rhetoric and how to debate are successful on the right wing. This is very true. And I would say that the best weapons for them are the people who do confront them. People like, Destiny from a few years ago, Vosh today, Xander Hall's another one, and Hunter Avallone. These people will actively engage with these voices and make them look foolish. And I think that's an important thing to do. We talk about how all ideas should be allowed to be expressed in the marketplace of ideas, but if you don't challenge them effectively, then you just think that they're correct. Their followers are like you; they can't defend either. Right wing is better in projecting. You're saying that I can't defend? That's mean. I take it a step further. Right or left wing, the authoritarians who don't believe in democracy but only in their point of view and power employ similar tactics. It's about power, not left or right. I do agree. I absolutely do agree. But I think that the very real result of power shifting to the right hurts people. And my personal philosophy is that we should do as little harm as possible, do as much good as possible, and try to use our voices to promote goodness over badness. You said think on your feet in a debate, I believe, not say you can't defend. I know I was mostly just poking the bear there. I know that you actually, I am Canadian, are a big fan of making me think on my feet, and I appreciate it very much. Because there have been times where you've given me a rhetorical challenge, and I'm like, oh shit, how do I answer this one? Because that shit ain't easy sometimes. But I personally think that the regressive mindset strips away power from people and increases the fear that people have. I'm actually in the middle of writing a script for what will be my first video essay in a very long time, but I feel like I should do so because I wanted to write a script about fascism and about what modern day fascism is, and how it doesn't necessarily mean we're looking at racists, but what are fascist ideologies. So I'm basically using Umberto Eco as a guide to talk about the discourse and the changes in discourse that I see that are concerning to me. Because I think the biggest problem we have is when we talk about fascism, a lot of people think that you mean racism and institutionalized racism. And therefore, you can hold up a guy like Enrique Tarrio, the head of the Proud Boys, who is not a white man, and go, see, the Proud Boys aren't fascist. When in fact, they tick every single box. They just don't use race as the thing overtly to discriminate against. So I do think it's an interesting thing. I really recommend watching the video that Xander Hall did, that I included in the chat. I'd also say watch yourself some FD Signifier and get a sense of what he was saying. But I do have a feeling like, we are going to probably see a lot more people who are sort of, I would say, middle of the road folks who are anti-establishment getting pulled further and further to the right, which we've seen already with the whole COVID-19 monster. We've seen a lot of people who have looked at the situation from an anti-establishment perspective and say, why should I do what the government tells me? And my answer would be, don't do what the government tells you. Do what the experts in the field tell you. If the experts in the field say wearing seatbelts will save your life, wear a fucking seatbelt, whether the government says that you have to or not. If the experts in the field say, yeah, this isn't the worst disease we've ever had, it ain't fun, but it ain't the worst disease we've ever had. However, for those people that are going to suffer the worst of outcomes from getting this disease, based on its transmission rate and its its target audience, for want of a better term, we really are running a risk that our healthcare system won't be able to withstand it. So please get vaccinated. Yeah, then get vaccinated. It's not about the government telling me what to do. It's about me looking at, doing my own research and assuming that the authorities in an area know what they're talking about. And I don't think those are bad assumptions or dumb assumptions. I think that's just how the grown-ups do, if that makes any sense. So yeah, it's been a year of me on YouTube. I've grown massive in that time. My power is almost unrivaled. And don't do what the government tells them. People are the same sheep who parrot and do what the fascists tell them. Lazy thinkers. Yes, and that was sort of my point. Is I don't think it's a matter of lazy sheep. I think a lot of people simply have a distrust of government, which I 100% endorse and support, but don't necessarily engage regularly in these kinds of conversations, and don't necessarily have all of the skills necessary to debunk the dumber points. Going back, and I've told this story a bunch of times, my once upon a time friend Bugadan, he refused to drive with a seatbelt because the government said that you had to wear a seatbelt. And I was like, you're a fucking idiot. It's not the government saying you have to wear a seatbelt. Yes, they do. But also, all of the data shows that you don't have to wear a seatbelt if you don't want to, but, it will protect you greatly. So the government is just putting through some law that says that you have to do this thing that is good for you. And I presented to him the idea that if the government forced you to breathe every 3 minutes, would you? And he was like, well, I mean, I have to, because it's a stupid argument. But to me, that's an important thing. Why would the government be involved? Because the government has to maintain the country. And the government has to deal with the ramifications of social decisions. So if we know that people are saved by seatbelts and saving people is a good thing, then passing a law about seatbelts is really kind of a non-issue, and it may make some people actually do it. In the same regard that, everyone was like, mandates for vaccines are terrible. We don't, they shouldn't be doing it. But when their jobs were on the line, when people were told, hey, you have to do this, a lot of people kowtowed. I don't know that that's a good thing. I don't like the idea of the government forcing you to do a thing, but I guess in this case, it's like the net positive outcome is worth it. Another angle on there. Don't wear a seatbelt, then a bumper thumper accident will hurt you and not the one with the seatbelt on. Why should I pay for your healthcare if you don't play safe in an obvious way? Exactly. And that's the thing, is the impact to not just, John Q. Public, who's the one driving with or without a seatbelt, but to the system that supports making people survive car accidents, and to the systems that are impacted by unnecessary death. The government does have an interest in these kinds of things. Wear your fucking belt so I don't have to pay for your stupid. So your buddy wasn't just anti-government, he was being stupid. You can't fight stupid. You're absolutely right. And ultimately, that guy would go on to get in a drunk driving motorcycle accident because apparently, I guess the government can't tell him not to get drunk and ride a motorcycle, and wound up in like broken back. He made his way through that, and he's, from everything I understand, he's alive and doing stuff. But like, you can't fight stupid. That guy was dumb. And my hope with him as my friend, my hope was to be an example of the other side of that conversation. And I remember a positive impact I had on him. We were talking about schooling, and he wanted to be a mechanic. He was someone who, like, from the get-go wanted to be a mechanic and didn't have high school, didn't have the grades, didn't this, didn't that. And I was like, dude, you can do this. And he didn't believe me. And then one day I came home from work and I was talking about process modeling, and I was sort of walking him through what I do with process modeling. And he goes, that's actually, to explain a little bit, essentially what I do in my job is I look at systems, or at least one facet of my job is I look at the systems that are in place, and I try to find ways where flaws in the systems can be improved. And you can do this with some very, very simple logical processes where you can draw out diagrams that explain the flow of information or what have you, and then look for where are the problems and how do we fix them. And you're essentially, what you're doing is you're taking a very large, complex problem and breaking it down into more manageable, understandable bits and pieces so that you can actually make changes to the greater whole. This concept applies to any time you are looking at a system, whether it's fixing a car, or developing software, or fixing government. All of these things are, they're systems that can be addressed and understood and adjusted if you break them down properly. So I was talking about that, and he's like, this is like what I do with cars. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. The difference between, my job and the job that you want to do is just that I get paid more and I have different tools. But the concept is the same. You have a broken down car. You start going through breaking down where could the problem be. If your car engine doesn't start, it's not a question of you have a flat tire, because that's unrelated. So you start to break down in your head the systems to the points where, it could be this, it could be this, it could be this, and that's where you begin to do your investigation and come up with an answer. And he was kind of blown away by this and convinced himself that he could do the job that I do. And I encouraged him in this, and he went and got his GED, and then he went to the school that I went to and did the entrance exam and passed it very handily, and then realized that he didn't want to do computers. He actually, nothing about this gig was something that he wanted. But what he did instead was he went to the trade school and did the entrance examination for a mechanic, which was the thing he'd always wanted, and passed it handily and wound up going to school to become a mechanic. So in that regard, I can say I had a good impact. I was just hoping I'd have more impact on him, but clearly not. And you are the one who knows, stupid, I am Canadian, because you know me. It seems like a good logical flow time for me to pause for a stretch outside. I will be back in a couple minutes. In the meantime, I'm going to put on some Keith Morrison band. This is the band that I sang last week when I Am Canadian challenged me to sing an old song that I was involved in. So we'll play a couple Keith Morrison band songs while I'm stepped out.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
And I know that they're not copyright strikes, so I'm happy about that. Where the fuck is my thing?
Sometimes I never smile, I never smile, I never smile. Sometimes I never smile, I never smile, I never smile. This is another story about love, love. This is another story about love, love. I'm wasted. There once was a man, he was a happy man. There once was a girl, she lived with 2 cats. They fell in love and lived happy ever after. They lived in love until they died. I'm wasted. I'm wasted. wasted. I'm wasted. Sometimes I never smile, I never smile, I never smile. Sometimes I never smile, I never smile, I never smile. This is another story about love, love. This is another story about love, love. I'm wasted. I'm wasted. At nights, see you smile. At nights, you hold me tight. Happy birthday to you. At nights, just hold me tight. I'm wasted. I'm wasted. Do 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 Stand still now, and I'm looking for some buried treasure. And you told me you're looking for the same thing. Stand still now, and I wish I could map out the future. In the morning, I'd have called with you. And I know I try to keep my house all tidy and clean. And you notice that I'm pretty good at that. And I got big feelings. You got big feelings. Yeah, I guess I did sweep you off your feet. Stand still now, and I'm looking for a way to cross the night. And I hope we make it to the leaf stove. Stand still now, and I'm looking for a fire fills the heart. Ain't nobody kept up with me yet. Stand still now. Stand still now. Stand still now. Stand still now. And sometimes you feel like you're busting under pressure. Just unlock and unload on me. I will sit here and I'll listen to your words, but baby, it's your world, not mine. I wish sometimes I could take it all away with the smash of my magic wand. But sometimes it never comes, it never comes. I wish that it just would come. Stand still now, and here I go again, looking for the dream. And I wish you'd soon see my face. Stand still now, and I wish I could give the world a hand. But it's hard when one foot's out the door. Stand still now. Stand still now. Stand still now. Stand still now. Now you're sitting by the water on the North Saskatchewan River. Big blue moon is up in the sky.
Fucking pause already, goddammit. There we go. All right, I have returned. And I am joined by one of my children will be playing Xbox in the chair nearby me. Jake's asked if he can. So, if you hear the clicking and clacking of joysticks, that'll be why. But such is life. I will continue to do the sweet, sweet content. And we're going to talk about the greatest thing of all. The most important thing facing men in the world, whether or not to masturbate. Yes, that's right. We're going to talk about the No Faps. This is the thing that I've been just amazed by for quite a long time, and I've thought about talking about it a few times, but this will be the first time I've really we're gonna dig in and we're gonna find out about what the Nofap movement is. The reason I want to do this, I saw a debate the other day between Vosh and I can't remember the name of the guy. Hang on, I'll we're not going to watch the debate because it's a good hour long, and the guy that Vosh is debating keeps accidentally masking off about how the Jew, which turns out not very good. It's Dr. E. Michael Jones. Maybe what we'll start with is we'll look at Dr. E. Michael Jones a little bit and understand where NoFap comes from. Because he takes the claim for this. So just to make sure that it's understood, there's a variety of different aspects of NoFap. There is the NoFap November, meaning don't masturbate all of November so that you can really be a better person. And then there's the semen retention people who believe that it, is a magic power that swims in my scrotum. No Fap? Yeah, seriously. And then there is the belief that you shouldn't ejaculate the night before a athletic competition because it takes away some of your yang, whatever the every sperm is sacred. Exactly. I should sing that for karaoke. If I can find it, I'll add that to the pile. So let's pop over. And before I do, I'm totally going to just quickly go to YouTube. And I'm going to type in karaoke. Every sperm is sacred. And if it's there, oh, it's there. So we will add this to the list. It is added. We'll be doing that. Because why not? Anyways, E. Michael Jones, author. The ADL. That's probably a good place to start. So this is the Anti-Defamation League talking about E. Michael Jones. E. Michael Jones is a Catholic writer who seeks to defend traditional Catholic teachings and values from those he perceives as seeking to undermine them. At various times, such diverse groups as Protestants, urban planners, and movie makers have been the subjects of his ire, but a long-standing obsession of Jones is the damage that he believes Jews are inflicting on the Catholic Church and Western civilization. So yes, he is an anti-Semite, and he kept oopsing and saying, like, mask off anti-Semitism stuff in the debate, which is one of the reasons why I'm not about to show it. Some examples here. It says, he describes Jews as outlaws and subversives who use religion as a cover for social revolution and claims that Judaism possesses a particularly malignant spirit. Jones also imagines the contemporary world with its social ills as having been cast in the imprint of Judaism, characterizing 21st century civilization as a Jewish world run on commercial principles. He also identifies this Jewish modernity as representing blood, the law, calculation, and hate. So, he's pretty clear. He's an anti-Semite. And if we add FAP to our search. Oh, there's the video. I should probably just paste the video link in chat if anyone wants to watch it, because it is a pretty fantastic, quote unquote, video. I think Vosh does a really good job of making him look like a fool, which I don't think is particularly difficult given the circumstances. It's a lot of. And it's interesting because he's someone who goes on debates but doesn't actually know how to debate. Like, he gets angry at one point when Vosh was like, okay, so convince me that masturbation is wrong. And he's like, well, why do I have to convince you? Because it's a fucking debate, buddy. Okay. Masturbation. So here's his book, Libido Dominandi, Sexual Liberation and Political Control. And this is what he's all about. This is, so let's see if we can find a, so the chunk here from the book says, thus a good man though a slave is free, but a wicked man though a king is a slave, for he serves no man alone. But what is worse, as many masters as he has vices, which is St. Augustine from the City of Good Writing, or of God Writing. At the time of the collapse of the Roman Empire, St. Augustine both revolutionized and brought to a close antiquity's idea of freedom. The man was not a slave by nature or by law, as Aristotle claimed. His freedom was a function of his moral state. A man has had as many masters as he had vices. This insight would provide the basis for the most sophisticated form of social control known to man. Which I'm assuming he means is the Jew. I don't need to go through all of this because that would be boring as all shit. But in the video, he brought up, or in the debate, sorry, he had some basic points. He said that masturbation is evil, and the reason it's evil is because it makes people wicked. It is a form of personal enslavement. I should probably switch over because we're not going to continue to look at his stuff. It's a form of personal enslavement to desire, and it makes us weak, and it saps our manliness and all these things. So one of the things that was brought up was the rate of rape. Vosh argued that the rate of rape has gone down significantly in modern years, while the rate of porn consumption, and thus one can assume masturbation, has probably increased. To which he says absolutely not, no way, never. It was brought up that countries where pornography is outlawed have often higher rape rates. And he was like, nope, nuh-uh, that ain't true. But his biggest thing is he claims that masturbation is a negative, isolating force. It means that people who are millennials or Gen Zs or whatever, because they're obviously the only people that masturbate, that they are being isolated. And Vosh says, well, what about video games? Video games are isolating too. And he's like, yep, and they're evil. And everything is evil if it isolates you. Because in his mind, the only purpose of sex is bebe. You make bebe with the sex. Otherwise, you are a sinner. Now that fits with the traditional Catholic dogma. And where that all comes from is the story of Onan. Let's maybe read the story of Onan, because I think that's a fun little bit of Catholicism, or religion in general, but the Catholics really love the story of Onan, who was Judah's son. So Onan is a minor biblical person in the book of Genesis, chapter 38, who was the second son of Judah. Like his older brother Onan was slain by God. Onan's death was retribution for being evil in the sight of the Lord and disobeying a direct order from the Lord by being unwilling to father a child with his widowed sister-in-law. So, essentially, after Onan's brother was slain by God, his father Judah told him to fulfill his duty to his brother by entering into a levirate marriage, which is where you hook up with your brother's wife because she needs protection because they lived in a patriarchal society. So with his brother's wife Tamar to give her offspring. Religion professor Tikva Freimer-Kensky has pointed out the economic repercussions of a levirate marriage. Any son born to Tamar would be deemed the heir of the deceased and able to claim the firstborn's double share of inheritance. However, if were childless and only had daughters, Onan would have inherited as the oldest surviving son. When Onan had sex with Tamar, they're skipping over. The basic premise is this. God kills her. God looks at Onan and says, "Hey, dude, she's gonna need somebody." And Onan goes, "Yeah, I guess you're right. I'll take my brother's wife, but like I'm not into her. I'm not. This isn't the thing I want to do. So like I'm not gonna like be her husband. That's my brother's wife." And God's like, "Oh no, buddy, you're gonna fuck the shit out of her." And Onan's like, "Nah, dude, that ain't right. Like, I don't have feelings for her. She married my brother. That's a little weird, don't you think?" And God's like, "No, I want to watch you fuck." Because that's what God does. And so Onan's like, "But I'm not into it." And they back and forth a little bit. And finally, God makes it pretty clear, like, "You don't fuck that girl, I'm going to kill you." Because, he was a good guy. And Onan's like, okay, I guess I'll fuck that girl. And so they go to bed, and they do their thing, but Onan doesn't feel good about the idea of siring a child with her, so he pulls out and spills his seed upon the dust. And God's like, "Fuck you, homeboy," and murders him for this. Because God really he wanted a fucking cream pie. He didn't want the pull-out game. He was all about the cream pie. And that's an important thing because Catholics and a lot of fundamental Christian perspectives base a lot of current cultural dogma on the story of Onan. It's the every sperm is sacred thing. When he pulled out, he wasted the gift of life-giving seed and therefore was punished by God. So therefore, masturbation is evil. Abortion is evil. Anytime there is a potential bebe, that is an act of evil unless it ends in a bebe or unless God kills the bebe. Otherwise, it's just you are doing against God, which is interesting because the same people also think that God has the big book of me that he's written all the details of my life in before I get to live them. So therefore, God made me pull out and then made me die because I did what I was made to do. It's confusing. Religion is weird. But essentially, this Dr. E. Michael What's-His-Pickle holds this whole concept really, really in high regard. And that the only reason for ever having a sex is to have a baby, or at least to try your darndest to have a baby. That's weird. I think it's neat that other people care so much about how people have the sex. Goofy bullshit to justify a priest class who own our power of interpretation of God over you. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, it is. It is goofy. It is ridiculous. It is unnecessary. Did his mom masturbate? Are you referring to the good doctor? Because I would bet not. I would bet that just based on just looking at him, the guy is clearly the product of a very deep fundamentalist Catholic environment. And I would bet that his mom was every bit the frustrated monster that Catholicism creates, the more closely you adhere to it. So, in his mind, anyone who does the masturbating and doesn't want to make bebe is in fact smiting God, the all-powerful being that can't possibly not see it coming. So that's a thing that we're all filthy filthies if we touch ourselves, and so we should stop. I'm going to go on the record. I'm going to say sometimes I masturbate. And I don't feel like God gives a flying fuck. Largely because I don't feel like God is real. But if he is real, I don't think he cares. I had an interesting conversation with my eldest son. We were talking about the whole concept of the God of the gaps. And how God is the answer to all questions until you start to have science. And then you start answering questions and the space for God gets smaller and smaller until you just have like these gaps in knowledge. And the gaps are where you say God lives. And ultimately, God just gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And if you think about the concept of if God is all powerful and has a plan for us and all of this kind of stuff, then how in the blue fuck am I able to pull out and shoot on the floor and therefore earn his ire? So he sees masturbation as a form of isolation that leads people away from the sanctity of marriage and therefore the sanctity of procreation and of doing the thing that God wanted us to do all along, and that is having sex and making a baby. I have a problem anytime someone says they know what the purpose of life is. They are full of shit. And the reason is because there will always be people who don't fulfill that purpose. And are they evil? So in the case of if you argue that the purpose of life is in making another life, or 86 of them if you're Mormon, is that true? Well, let's think about that. That means that the lives of the following people are squandered. The gays, children who die, people who are ugly, people who are socially incapable, and yet all of these things are created by God. So that would imply that he is actively making something that can't fulfill the purpose that he has designed for life, and therefore it's just either he's setting us up to fail or he's not all that powerful. In a galaxy far, far away, within it which are billions and billions of stars and trillions of planets, is planet Fap. They breed by mitosis and split in two. God loves them too. Absolutely. And, I think it's interesting that God only cares about how we ejaculate. All of the animals, all of the plants that reproduce by sexual reproduction, and indeed all the things that don't use sexual reproduction, that use meiosis or mitosis, or hybridization, all of those things God doesn't care about. It's really just whether some dude fucks his dead brother's wife. That's the thing that's important. He believes that masturbation, because we are isolating ourselves and we are not engaged in normal, healthy human interactions, trying to win over a lady and woo her and give her a shiny apple and therefore earn your place in her vagine, that means that we are spiritually broken and that society can control us now. And he talks a lot about how, like in Japan, they just never had porn until post-World War II. Apparently that's a thing that he thinks, which is hysterical because clearly they had porn. They had laws they put in place. The creation of hentai was because you couldn't. There was so much porn that they were getting angry about all the porning, and they said you can't porn. You can't have a drawing of a woman and a man doing the coitusing. So someone was like, fine, here's a woman and an octopus. Again, I don't know if this is fucking accurate take or not, but I'm pretty sure every society has had porn even before the World War II. And his whole thing about World War II was it was a Jewish plot because he's an anti-Semite, and that's what anti-Semites do. Everything is a Jewish plot. But he believes that if we masturbate, it means we are gullible and controllable by God. Sorry, not by God, by evil, by the government. And he believes that it is an immoral act to masturbate. And, I think it's an immoral act to masturbate publicly. I think it's an immoral act to masturbate in somebody's company who isn't consenting. That would be immoral. But masturbating, no. Well, I have to have been to Greece and can say porn has always existed. Yeah, like Grecian ancient architecture has like pornographic drawings etched into marble and shit. Like it's a thing. We've always had it because we've always been fascinated by sex and the other sex and all of that stuff. And there is nothing wrong with that. As people, we're actually, biologically driven to seek out pleasure and including orgasm. When gay people, for example, it's not like the minute that they don't have the desire to create a new life, they're like, oh, well, I guess I'm done with sex. That's not a thing that happens. We're animals. Animals have sexual desire. And sometimes they have desires that are things that you can just deal with. I can tell you that when I was living with a girl and regularly having sex, I masturbated less. Didn't stop masturbating, but I certainly masturbated less because of access to a better answer. But that doesn't mean that I was immoral or that I was less immoral or any of these things. Like it's just kind of dumb. Warm apple pie springs to mind. I bet it does. I am Canadian. I kid. We have long had all kinds of simulacrums for pretending that we're having sex when we're not. Masturbating with your hand is certainly one example, but the vacuum cleaner, who is clearly asking for it, as you say, and I would say bestiality is an example of that. I'm not saying that it's a good example that people should do. I'm saying that it's a thing that people have done. Can't get your rocks off? Well, grab a sheep. Is he anti-vax, aka vacuums too? I bet he is. I bet, or more accurately, I think that vacuums are things that he would say should not be touched by men, but certainly by trad women. And then he brought up this really weird point about guilt. And he's like, can you, here's a gotcha for you. Do people ever feel guilty after masturbating? And Vosh was like, yes, sometimes I imagine they do. He's like, and guilt is a proof that you've done something immoral. And Vosh is like, no, guilt comes as a result of you have this chemical high that you get from masturbating and from orgasming in particular, and then that chemical high is followed by a crash, which can make you feel guilt, sadness, all manner of things. And he's like, aha, but it's impossible for people to feel guilty after they've had sex with their partner, who is like their married partner. And Vosh was like, well, that's dumb. Of course people can feel guilty after having sex with their partner. But they don't. I have proof. And Vosh was like, can I see your proof? And he was like, no, I just know these things because they're real. And that was ultimately the quality of his debate. But it made I keep seeing this stuff, and I'm fascinated by it. So let's do a little search for semen retention, find out a little bit about what the people are saying. So semen retention. We'll just go straight semen retention. Everything you need to know about semen retention. This is from healthline.com. I don't know anything about healthline.com, but let's find out. Apparently, this has been medically reviewed by Janet Brito, PhD, LCSW, CST, written by Anne Pietrangelo. So, what is semen retention? It's the practice of avoiding ejaculation. You can do this by abstaining from sexual activity altogether, of course, or you can learn how to orgasm without ejaculating. Although it may sound like some wild new fad, the practice is probably as old as humankind. I know there's plenty of days where I have not masturbated. People have different reasons for it, from trying it from physical to emotional to spiritual. Keep reading as we explore some of the potential benefits of semen retention, how it's done, and whether research supports the theories behind it. Where did this idea come from? Semen retention might seem like a modern concept, but it's only because websites and forums have made it easier to discuss such things openly. In reality, it's an idea that's been around a long time, and it's actually part of some ancient practices. And we all know that when things are old, they're always better. I see there's a comment in chat. The dreaded semen backup. Yes, research the DSBs while you're at it. Yes, I remember hearing all about deadly sperm buildup and how it could kill you. People give a variety of reasons for their interest in semen retention, including the belief that frequent ejaculation weakens you. Some say that semen retention improves fertility, sexual pleasure, or physical health. Many believe that sperm retention helps redirect sexual energies to other areas of life, or that it improves mental health and spiritual growth. For some, it's the ultimate journey of self-control. Is this the same thing as No Fap? The word No Fap is often used in the same concept as semen retention, but it's not really the same thing. No Fap is the name of an organization, and nofap.com is its associated community-based porn recovery website. Nofap.com's About section explains that NoFap is not a verb, a principle, or a movement. Its stated purpose is providing information and community support to help people who want to recover from compulsive sexual behavior and improve their relationships. Now, for the record, I do believe that masturbation can be an addictive thing. I absolutely have no reason to deny that whatsoever. Here's the thing. Anything that you do, particularly things that give you the dopamine high, can be problematic if you use it as a coping mechanism, if you use it as the sole source of your gathering dopamine, if you become reliant on it as the only way to feel good. Absolutely. And I do believe there are people who have suffered from compulsive sexual behavior. I totally agree that they need help, not this help. So while it might be part of the discussion, NoFap's focus is on breaking the dependency on porn, not specifically on semen retention. And again, this is breaking the dependency on porn because that's the only way that someone could become addicted to masturbating, apparently. Is it known by any other names? I don't care. What are the purported benefits? Here we go. More confidence and self-control. Less anxiety and depression. Increased motivation. Better memory, concentration, and overall cognitive function. So if you don't come, you'll be a better person. You'll feel better. You'll be less depressed because clearly orgasm makes you depressed. It will motivate you and you'll be able to remember things better. Amazing. It's going to give you greater vitality, which is easily measurable with a vitality yardstick. Increased muscle growth, which is not in your arm. Thicker hair, deeper voice. Define that addiction for me. I would say that there are people who are, I wouldn't know about whether or not they've missed a day at work due to a sex addiction, but I would say that there are people who use masturbation as a coping device and that they don't have or ejaculation more specifically, and that this is sort of, becomes the only way they know how to deal with things. And I would call that a harbinger of addiction. Whether I'm right or not, I'm not a dick scientist. I don't know shit. But you don't agree, and you don't have to. Do you have a counter argument that there is no such thing? Because I would say that there are people who can become addicted to just about anything. Some people use breathing in the moment. Yes. It's natural to breathe. Yes. It's natural to fap. Yes. So what? I would say that if the correlation that you're making is since it's natural to breathe and natural to fap, therefore it's not a problem. Using masturbation to cope isn't a problem. I would say using masturbation as the only way of coping is a problem. If you are, for example, at the office and your boss comes in and says, Johnson, why are you late with the Gerkowitz paper that we're putting together, the sales pitch for the Gerkowitz Corporation? And you go, I have to go and masturbate because I have no way of coping with this. Obviously, we're talking about a serious extreme, but I have to assume that there are people out there who suffer from that. Fine. That would be one hurting person if that was their only outlet. Yes, absolutely. And I think that there are people who suffer that. The same could be said for drinking alcohol. It is natural to drink. It is natural to breathe. So what? But if you need to use alcohol as a way to cope, or if you need to masturbate, or if you need to, whatever that thing is that you rely on as your method for coping, if it becomes the only thing, then it becomes a problem. I'm not enjoying this article because this is... here, maybe we'll get some. Is there any research to support this? In 2018, researchers conducted a systemic review of studies of the length of ejaculatory abstinence and semen characteristics. They noted the very quality and limited nature of existing studies. Evidence suggests that an abstinence period of less than a day, rather than a longer abstinence period, is linked to improved sperm motility. Okay, so if abstinence period of less than a day, rather than a longer period, is linked to improvement in sperm motility, that's good, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't masturbate. There's nothing about that says that therefore masturbation reduces sperm motility or anything like that. The part I'm disputing is the to cope bit. Alcoholism isn't a need to cope, it's an addiction. They can't stop, DTs, etc. Mind-body problem. I would add that, or I would counter, that addiction takes a lot of different forms. There is a physical addiction to alcohol, but there are mental addictions that are equally important. For example, I am a smoker, and I have a small physical addiction to smoking, but a gigantic mental addiction to smoking. The actual physical problem of my not having a cigarette is negligible at best, and I have quit for long periods of time and not suffered any DTs or serious life-altering pain or anything like that. But certainly I am addicted to cigarettes, and that addiction is largely mental. I would counter that most of the physical side effects are mental in origin as well, but I don't know if that's true or not. Yeah, you can call it. So I have a habit, but not an addiction. I guess you're like that's splitting hairs. Is it saying that I am not addicted to cigarettes? It's just a habit. I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist. I can't speak to where the line in the sand between the two are. I would describe what I have as a smoking addiction. I may be wrong. I made the claim that I have an addiction. Yes, and you're therefore splitting hairs and saying it's not an addiction, it's a habit, or as She Loves Puns puts it, a compulsion. I would say, however you want to slice it, it's kind of the same thing. And my dad used to describe an aunt of mine who was, or a second aunt or great aunt or whatever the fuck, who was an alcoholic. She was never drunk, but she had to drink in order to get through her day. She would never, you wouldn't see her go through DTs, but she would become cranky and irritable until she had a drink. Is that addiction? Yeah, in my opinion, it is. Is it a habit? Definitely. Is it a compulsion? Probably. Why is your addiction to cigarettes and lack of doing anything about it any better than Dr. Don't Masturbate, who is offering mental salvation to the stupid? Why is my addiction to cigarettes and lack of doing anything about it any better than... I'm not saying I'm better than him. I confused how... I think the thing would be to say I am... if I was comparing my addiction to... I'm not even sure what you're getting at here. All he's doing is trying to help others, Jim. Well, yes, he's trying to help others in a way that I don't think is particularly helpful because there's no science that backs that up, or at least so far we haven't seen any science that backs it up. What I would say is the difference is I'm saying I have an addiction and I probably should quit, but I haven't done so yet. Whereas he's saying it's an addiction, and if you do it, you will become weak and the government will control you. And the Jew. So I see a very different perspective there, and that I see his attempts to help as being very negative and crass, frankly. So I don't feel like they're the same thing, like remotely. Like if somebody came to me and said, Jim, you need to quit smoking. And I said, you're right, I do. And they said, no, you don't understand. When you smoke, it removes you from, it isolates you and it removes you from normal, healthy sexual relationships, and it weakens your character and makes God hate you. I would be like, well, that's shit, and you can fuck off and die. Your sin tax dollars go to the government. The government's controlled by people with agendas. He's right, they own you, and all you have to do is stop buying cigarettes. That's weak, dude. That's a weak argument. The same could be said for food. I don't know what to tell you. It's completely not a thing. Yeah, I'm paying extra taxes, but we're not talking about food. Well, yeah, food is an addiction, and yet food is an addiction in that you have some serious physiological ramifications if you don't consume it on a regular basis. Yes, I'm sidestepping. That's what I'm doing. No, I'm afraid I know what you're doing. I am Canadian, and it is adorable, and it's something that I love about you. But I don't remotely see the two things in the same light. If I am told by a doctor to quit smoking, it's never because of the questions of my moral character. It's never going to be the thing that prevents me from having healthy, normal relationships with other people. It's just, that's not good for you. We have science that shows you it's not good for you, so you should stop. And I go, yes, I probably should. And then so far have not. In a 2007 animal study, researchers found that androgen receptors in the brain, which help your body make use of testosterone, were lower with frequent masturbation. Okay, that may very well be the case. I think that's it's an animal study, so I'd need to dig in and really understand it. And I'm not really in a position where I can do that because I'm not an expert on these kinds of studies. But taken at face value, it would be worth evaluating whether or not this study transitions into humans. Who decides whether you're moral or not, Jim? God does. Only God can judge me, bruh. I decide whether I'm moral or not, ultimately, and hopefully I'm right. Morality is a shared set of perceptions and nothing more. So I choose to try to live what I consider to be a moral life. Period. So yeah, in this, does the study translate equally to humans? Was it a good study? All that kind of stuff. And what impact would lower androgen receptors in the brain have? I don't know. In a small 2003 study, researchers documented a link between ejaculation and changes in serum testosterone levels. Among the 28 volunteers, testosterone levels peaked on the 7th day of abstinence. Okay. The impact of a little bit of testosterone is probably not substantial in day-to-day life. But again, who knows? Small 2001 study found elevated testosterone levels in participants who abstained from masturbation for 3 weeks. Again, we're talking small studies, and this is hard to say whether this is valid science or not. In a 2000 study of male athletes, researchers found that sexual activity didn't have a detrimental effect on athletic performance, but having intercourse 2 hours before a competition could. And I would say that makes sense. The argument of athletic performance has long been one. You hear about guys who are like, yeah, I can't have sex. It's the night before the big game, baby. Cool, but this study found that that's not the case. But 2 hours before could have an impact. But could that impact? Would it be because of reduction in testosterone or something, or simply because maybe fucking requires the burning of some energy, and energy is what the person's going to need. Correlation isn't easy. Causation is hard. Yeah, I agree. That's a valid point. How do you say, hey, look, I found correlating data and therefore causal data. So ultimately, this feels to me like a site that is just like really grasping at straws. Let's see if we can find medical news today. I don't know. Mind Body Green. I feel pretty. Benefits of how to orgasm without. Let's see what that without says. Without ejaculation. For people with penises, orgasm is usually equated with ejaculation, but they're actually separate events, and some people intentionally train themselves to orgasm without ejaculation, a process sometimes known as semen retention. See, that's interesting, because I know that you can have what I have always understood to be called drygasms, but semen retention to me is a whole different monster. It's the intentional process of avoiding ejaculation, so I don't think this is what we're looking for. Let's look for scholarly articles. We're clearly going down a strange rabbit hole. The semen loss anxiety syndrome. That's interesting. Male retention, semen displacement, and human sperm competition. A preliminary investigation of tactics to prevent and correct female infidelity. That sounds not so valid. The function of human semen coagulation and liquefaction. Okay, we're not going to find. I was hoping that we would find stuff that would be a little bit more clear. So instead, I'm just going to riff. I see, can you find a published peer-reviewed article on this? Clearly the answer is, I did not very quickly find one. I probably could if I dug real deep, but that sounds like a whole lot of time that I'm not prepared to take right now. The science, as I understand it, and I think this is supported by the stuff that they referenced, basically says that your body produces sperm. Ejaculating reduces the number of sperm, probably causes your body to spike a certain amount of diverting testosterone into the creation of new sperm or something over the time. But it doesn't stop you from being athletic. It can affect athletic output within a couple of hours, but not like the night before. Semen retention is not a scientific thing. It is a moral thing. And you have to therefore accept the immorality of ejaculation. And I personally think that is incorrect. You just spent 10 times longer trying to find a science reference than 99% of the social debaters on social media, or so-called debaters on social media. Well, that's probably true. Here's and again, I am not a scientist. This is not science. This is opinion and nothing more. I have gone through periods where I have masturbated a lot. I have gone through periods where I have masturbated very little. In terms of the overall quality of life, I don't think either one has been important. I would say that we have a lot of recent findings that show that regular masturbation supports a healthy prostate, which would imply a direct correlation between good and masturbating. That said, I think really what it boils down to is regular ejaculation is healthy, which makes sense when you consider the way our bodies are. I'm sickened by your periods of over self-stimulation. Well, and so you should be. I think you should spend some time imagining them in slow motion. To me, I find that the arguments around things like No Fap and semen retention are bad. They're bad arguments. They are testimonial, just like I just did. Me saying that I haven't noticed a difference in how I feel if I am masturbating regularly or not, or ejaculating regularly or not, That's not science. That's not something that anyone should consider as valid information. That is nothing but personal testimony off the cuff. It's not like I'm keeping a chart and a log of my overall moods and how it pertains to the recentness of ejaculation. That said, I look at our bodies, we're animal bodies. We produce sperm. We produce sperm all the time. If there was a correlation between, for example, if my body produced sperm up to the point where I conceived a child, and then my body stopped producing sperm or went into a reduction in sperm production or something like that, okay, that would mean that I would have to say that there's some kind of biological correlation there. It's a complicated, multifaceted topic, and research is lacking. Opinions, on the other hand, are rife and increasing. Absolutely. And I am making it worse by adding mine, in spite of a dearth of science and evidence. I don't think there is a dearth of science and evidence. I think that there's a lot of the opinions are based on appeals to morality and appeals to particularly religious authority, and that never sits well with me. When I look at the actual data, the things that I have seen in my very limited exposure have been that ejaculation is good for the prostate, that rates of prostate problems like cancers are reduced for people who still are regularly orgasming as of their 40s. So in that regard, I'm pretty sure my prostate is iron like a lion in Zion. But all of this is speculation. To apply a religious doctrine to it seems ridiculous. The idea, the story of Onan that we read, where God was just so gosh darn invested in watching him cream pie that girl. That's not a thing that I can take seriously. And when it comes from a guy like E. Michael What's-His-Putz, his whole argument is based on morality and the purpose of life. And I don't think the purpose of life is procreation. Informed opinions and uninformed opinions are still just opinions, yay or nay. Oh, I absolutely agree. My opinion, for example, is maybe an informed opinion, but probably not, but certainly not an actual valid thing that anyone needs to take seriously. There is an angry, vengeful, all-knowing God. God knew he'd pull out and killed him for it anyway. That's the thing that always gets me confused with the idea of, the stories of in religious texts. The best example I can think of is Judas. If you think about, the story of Judas and his betrayal of Christ, it's kind of a shitty book if Christ isn't betrayed and doesn't get killed for all of people's sins. If Christ goes through a fat Elvis phase, it becomes a pretty crappy book. One would argue that he sent his son to die at the hands of mankind, so therefore Judas was doing exactly what God wanted him to do and was living up to the letter of the requirement. So how can he be considered at blame for betrayal of Christ? How can any of our actions be problematic if we are following the script God has written for us? If we're not, why is God not strong enough to defend against our wanking or pulling out or whatever? Again, we're talking about stupid questions that make you go, why does people take this shit seriously? Why do people believe God real? In the animal kingdom, animals masturbate. There's a rather awful video of a monkey, or I believe a gorilla, using a frog that it found in its enclosure as a masturbatory aid and essentially murdering this frog. God, politics, morality, good and evil. Philosophy is the path, love of wisdom. And that's, I 100% agree. I think we ask these questions, and I think that at least in my personal opinion, the answers are important, and the direction that we come up with is valuable in defining who we become, and defining how we interpret the world around us. And I think that is a good thing. In much the same way as I don't listen to the government when they tell me to have a vaccine, I listen to the scientists. Similarly, when E. Michael Doodlepopper decides to tell me that, wicked sin on my bed sheets, okay, well, you're not an expert on anything, so you can shut the fuck up. I'm going to try to understand from, through my own moral system and through my own sense of what is right and wrong, which again is very much individualized, and I'm okay with the answers. So yes, I will continue to wank. I will continue all the way through in November. I will make sure that I nut. And I don't see the healing power of not having sex. I do see strong correlations between sexual repression and negative actions towards women. If you look at societies where women wear burqas as a matter of course, and the respect that women have in those communities, I think it's a pretty telling thing. If you look at rape rates in places with fundamentalist philosophy, I think there's a strong correlation there that's worth understanding. The Puritan mindset is flawed, and the more we spend time trying to promote the idea of absolute goodness or absolute morality being defined by a set of simplistic statements like "thou shalt not fap," the more we really do ourselves a disservice. And dogma doesn't stop us from being bad. It's not rape if you marry them Islamically properly. A 90-year-old and a 9-year-old in the goodness of Allah's eyes, and that is a thing that I find completely creepy. Similarly, when Ted Nugent was like, well, yeah, I asked her parents, and they said if you marry her, it'll be fine. So I married the child that I wanted to have sex with. Like, that's fucking gross. Growing up Catholic can vouch for lack of education, and openness correlates with violence and oppression of women. I see that, and I fully find it appalling that, like, we live in a world where we can know stuff. And when we don't share information, schools that have abstinence-only education tend to have pretty high teen pregnancy rates. The number one thing that has been found to empower women to get out of a particularly incestuous and similar child molestation kinds of situations is sex education classes. So it seems like we need more understanding, not less. And when we say the reason not to do a thing is because God said so, that's less. If you say the reason not to do a thing is because here's some valid reasons, some scientifically understood reasons, some socially understood reasons, whatever, then, you can learn from that. But God is an excuse. My sister teaches in Catholic school, and it drives her crazy. She gets in trouble for teaching anything besides abstinence and sees what happens. I could not imagine, just in general, teaching in Catholic school. A buddy of mine was substitute teaching in Calgary, trying to get on with the Calgary School Board. And he was substituting at this Catholic school, and he brought me the handout that he had to go over that day as a sub, and it was amazing. It was a pamphlet entitled, "So You Want to Be a Moral Relativist?" And every step of the way, it was amazing. Oh, so you're a moral relativist, are you? Then go and rape someone, because morals are flexible and not what is defined in the Bible, which, for the record, does not anywhere say don't rape anyone. In fact, you look at the Ten Commandments and you go, wow. The first half of those are just about making sure that God feels good about himself. And then you get into like the supposedly, holy doctrine of don't hurt people and don't steal from people, but things like rape are never talked about. Turns out, if you look at the 7 tenets of the Satanic Temple, they're a lot more moral, and I find that adorable. It's not that Satanism is more moral; it is that we can do better than the 10 Commandments for an actual reasonably moral way of evaluating the world, and the Satanists just happen to have done that. Why do priests rape? Because they can. I think that priests rape for a number of reasons. I think get moved from church to church because they can. I totally agree. I think priests rape because of there being no fappers for all intents and purposes. I think priests rape because of power dynamics. I think that priests rape because of forced abstinence. I hate Bishop Fred Henry, or loathe Bishop Fred Henry. You've brought up Bishop Fred Henry before, and I can't remember who that is. But yeah, all of that shit is very real in my mind. I think, when I was a kid, I remember talking about, or using the phrase, all things in moderation. Alcohol in moderation. Drugs in moderation. Masturbation in moderation. If you do these things, you're probably not going to have a bad time. Now, there's exceptions to that. If the moderation you're applying is like smoking crack, for example, you can have some pretty serious life-changing reactions as a result. He sent a few back to Rome. Yes. Oh, I remember now. Yes, he's a bishop in the Catholic Church, obviously. 7th Calgary, or Catholic bishop of the Diocese of Calgary. Commented on Canadian Prime Minister Jean Chrétien's support for legalization of same-sex marriage. I pray for the Prime Minister because I think his eternal salvation is in jeopardy. He's making a morally grave error and he's not being accountable to God. He doesn't understand what it means to be a good Catholic. Referred to Joe Clark as scandalous when Joe Clark said he was pro-choice. Does not allow public health officials to vaccinate students in Catholic schools against HPV. Believes that HPV vaccine is a partial prophylaxis, which is utilized instead of rather than with the development of self-discipline and virtue. Because you know what? Self-discipline and virtue will stop you from getting HPV as long as it's combined with not being exposed to HPV. He is a giant piece of shit. I recall hearing about him. And yeah, apparently he sent a few of the child molesting priests back to Rome. The old 3-card Monty shell game of like, where's the pedophile priest? Oh, is he under here? No, he's not. Oh, he must. Fucking creepy. Yeah. So Fap hard, Fap often, Fap without guilt, Fap without remorse. Don't do it in public. Don't do it in front of somebody who is not consenting. But come again. That will be my advice to the world. You know why? It's a positive release of endorphins. Feels nice. It makes for reduction in stress. It makes for a reduction in a variety of things. It equalizes our body chemistry a little bit. And it's good for the prostate, apparently, if you're a dude. If you're a girl, you've probably suffered a life where you didn't get enough orgasms because you've had nothing but shitty lovers. So yeah, let's fucking do it. Let's promote pro-Fap. That's what I am. He accepted known pedophile priests into Calgary. Then when they were found out, he moved them along without shame or apology. Of course not. Of course he wouldn't be shaming or apologizing. Fuck Catholicism. Fuck the church. Fuck Catholics. I'd rather masturbate than prostrate myself to the church. I totally agree. And the idea that an organization can establish what they see as the only morality and it be based on such a immoral book full of really bad behaviors by important parties, like, you need to start the fucking off process. If God's gonna murder a guy because he pulled out, like, that's not a very nice God. God's going to make people burn in eternal hellfire because he made them logical, made them doubtful, and they didn't believe as a result of being designed that way. And then God's like, and since you did all the things I wanted you to do, you're going to burn in hell. Well, then fuck that God. Fuck him hard. I usually try and stay away from religion on these because I am a feisty, spicy meatball when it comes to that. But here we are. Here we are, me going off. At the end of the day, we don't know what the right morality is. I remember there's this old Twilight Zone episode. I think it was Twilight Zone or one of those types of shows. And aliens appear at the United Nations and they're like, we have watched you from afar. You have not been fulfilling your purpose. And we demand that you have 24 hours to resolve your little petty wars and do the things that you need to do. Otherwise, we will destroy the earth. And the people in the United Nations are like, bros, let's do this. And they spend 24 hours in this heated negotiation to come up with a pact for world peace. And just in time, because the aliens come back and they're like, bros, did you do it? And they're like, we came up with world peace. And the aliens are like, bros, we're a warrior people. We wanted you to fight. Dun, dun, dun. Who knows what morality is? In my mind, the way that I draw my morality is I look at the fact that I am a social animal. So I need to function in a society. And I think the best way to function in a society that is positive is one, where you do good and where you don't try to eat people, for example. It is where you build up the society rather than tearing down the society or parts of the society. It's where you value individuals for all that they bring and not expect individuals to bring exactly the same thing over and over again. And I think that those are pretty simple claims that are far-reaching, and so you can use these to say, is an action right or good? Well, that's my moral framework. Obviously, I'm highly simplifying it, but that's my moral framework. I can look at my actions and decide whether they meet that moral framework or not. And I'd assume that's moral simply because as a social animal and a social species, we have a vested shared interest in an end goal of things not being shitty all the time. So, is it immoral for me to get vaccinated? No, it's moral for me to get vaccinated, according to my personal morality, because I am doing a thing that will benefit those around me by not worsening things for those around me, potentially. The only argument that has ever been something that an anti-vaxxer has said that has any kind of merit that I've ever heard is the idea that what if you get the vaccine and then you come into contact with COVID and you are asymptomatic and pass it on to people because you didn't know because you were vaccinated. And that's valid. It's just a stupid point because at that point I've done everything I can to protect other people. And if somehow, unbeknownst to me, this happens, well, that's way beyond my sphere of things that I can control. But I've done everything I could